Identical twin Rendan, are you here? Hey, Rendan, what's going on? Oh, I didn't know you're here. I'm just getting into character. I'm about to review Brightburn. So, oh, that makes sense. Okay, yeah, I get it, because red, the alien spaceship and everything. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Then I'm just gonna go do that. Well, I'm just gonna play some 2K. So Brightburn is a movie that recently had a lot of hype around it. It was coming to theaters, a lot of people were excited about it because it was supposedly going to be a take on Superman where he is evil. And it was similar in setup to the original Superman's, where he crashes in this alien craft into a little farm, and then the parents raise him to be Earth's mightiest hero. But in this case, he just turns into a dick. And I was honestly kind of hyped for that idea, with James Gunn on board producing and a team of writers that seemed competent. I had hope that this would at least be okay, that it would at least have some interesting things happening. But it's not okay. In fact, it's very bad. It's an often boring, lame, and lazy movie at best. So let's just get into it.
Stopped.
That's weird.
So the movie starts off with, I think, my least favorite trope in all of Hollywood. Something interesting happens, then it cuts to years later or years earlier. In this case, 10 years later. I don't know why, but this always bothers me. It doesn't matter if the movie itself ends up being good or not, but I think it's just because it reeks of laziness. It reeks of being cheap. A cheap way of hooking the audience into your story. Because they always say you should have a hook right at the start to bring your audience members in and be engaged. But this hook is so obnoxiously transparent, because especially in the case of this movie, it just shows these two wooden characters talking about nothing that matters, and then the spaceship crashes, there's some earthquakes that happen, and then it just cuts to some baby footage, and then 10 years later. Why is this even important? Just show these establishing shots at the end of this 10-year later title card. If you open the movie with those establishing shots and went into the rest of the movie, I don't think anyone would be upset, and it wouldn't start in this incredibly lazy, cheap way. So now the movie shows Elizabeth Banks wandering around her property looking for Brandon, the evil Superman, who isn't evil yet. But she does this whistle game with him that comes back later in the movie. So then the spaceship that he crashed in wakes up? Why now? Why at all? What makes the spaceship do this? Why do the writers feel the need to have more cheap plot devices? None of these questions are answered. Okay, so this is where things really start to fall apart and straight up make no sense. Like, why would the mower still be functional? Wouldn't it be in pieces? Wouldn't the gas all leak out? Like, come on, movie. No, but really, why would he stick his hand in this lawnmower? I mean, it seems to be trying to communicate that he's never had these types of powers before and that he's kind of awestruck by them. And his first instinct is to see if he can cut his own hand off in a lawnmower. I don't care that there's ominous whispering in the background because they're trying to make it seem like it makes sense. It doesn't. Even if somebody told me I had these powers and I was able to launch a lawnmower that far, I still wouldn't put my hand in the blades because I'd be scared that it would be chopped off. It seems like a weird jump from average, everyday 12-year-old to Earth's mightiest hero. Like, that's such a colossal leap that it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It needs to have a nice slow ramp to him doing this kind of thing. But instead it's, oh, he woke up one night and walked out and found his little spaceship, and then he tossed a lawnmower and stuck his hand in the blade. That's such a colossal jump that it just does not work.
Give it to me.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said, give it to me!
So Brandon suddenly completely changes his demeanor from quiet nerd to raging maniac overnight and loses his cool at a diner at his parents' on his birthday. Then he turns into a serious creep and shows up at his crush's house in the middle of the night, does nothing, and just leaves. But the next day is interesting because he crushes her hand.
He's a pervert.
Why?
Caitlin, idiot. Help him up or you fail this class.
What are you doing?
Brandon!
Let go! Stop it!
Brandon, stop!
She called him a pervert and then let him fall during a trust building exercise, so watching her hand get smashed by him is very satisfying. And honestly, if the movie was more like this, I think I would like it more. If it was more of the idea of him hurting people that hurt him, I would be okay with that. But instead, he just murders people because. There's hardly any motivation, there's hardly anything interesting compelling him to do things. He just murders people because he's evil. It's again, an incredibly lazy writing habit that I am not fond of in the least in this movie. And the thing that's really frustrating is that if this movie was to present the audience with an ethical or moral choice or debate, I think it could have really worked. If they were to say, look at this horrible guy doing horrible things to horrible people. Does that make him a good person? Doing horrible things to horrible people. Is that a good thing to do? And I think that ethical or moral debate would be very interesting in this movie. This guy is torturing and killing bad people. That would be interesting, but instead, he just murders people because. He murders his aunt and uncle just because he doesn't want them to tell his parents something. That's so boring. That's so trite.
Get in the truck.
You shouldn't tell my parents.
If they were to present us with a moral choice or some kind of ethical question, that would be something. That would be great. But this movie can't even do the bare minimum, honestly. All it has to do is make the change between good to evil make sense. And it can't even pull that off. All it has to do is change Brandon from a good person to an evil one in a way that works. But instead, they just have a red glowing spaceship say you're evil and then he just is. Ugh! So now Brandon goes to torture and murder the mom of his crush because her mom doesn't want her daughter, whose hand was broken by Brandon, talking to Brandon. If that made sense. Anyway, because he broke that girl's hand, he has to go to counseling, and his counselor just happens to be related to him. It's his aunt. But because he doesn't want her to tell his mom that he's being a bad boy, he murders her husband after doing the lamest horror movie stuff. Hey, it's me. Okay, goodbye.
But why?
This stuff sucks, man. I hate when horror movies have characters standing around and then the villains just sort of show up in the background so that the audience can go, oh, and then they disappear, and then the audience go, oh, where'd he go? I hate that. That's like the lamest thing a horror movie can do. Right next to just the false scare where somebody grabs someone's shoulder and it makes a loud orchestra noise. Those two things are literally the worst things a horror movie can do. False scares and having a villain just pop up in the background to scare the audience. It's not a scare. That's literally the cheapest way of building tension and trying to scare the audience, because the character in the movie doesn't even notice it. And that's the whole drive of what is scary in movies, or what should be scary, is your fear for the characters. But the problem is, the characters don't notice it, and you don't care about the characters, especially in this movie. This movie has the lamest, driest, most cliche, flat, thinly scripted characters I've ever seen in a horror movie. That's probably hyperbole, but they're awful. Every single one is awful. The dad is just like an angry guy. Elizabeth Banks is just overprotective mom, and then the aunt and uncle that he's about to murder are just the aunt and uncle. That is their characters, aunt and uncle. They have no other interesting qualities. All their traits just boil down to be aunt and uncle. And so why am I scared for them? And of course, how can I be scared? Brandon is literally an alien demon from another planet who is invincible, who can't even be hurt by anything except the metal on his ship, which is far away from here. So why should I be scared for them? They're not gonna stop him, so he's just gonna kill him. And of course he does. So why did it take 25 minutes to do that? Just have him murder him. That's it. That's all I want to see is just some deaths, but it takes so long to do them. It does the lamest horror movie stuff to get there. And then when they actually kill him, it's not bad. Like I said, the gore effects are pretty solid. The practical effects are pretty solid. They have some good ideas, but they just take so long to execute them. Like, the meat of this movie could have literally been boiled down into like a 30-minute short film. That's how much content is in this. It's just so boring.
No! What are you waiting for? Do it!
So now Brandon's parents realize that he's evil and his dad takes him out hunting, but really he's just taking him out to kill him. And honestly, this is like the best scene in the movie. I really like this scene because it's presenting characters with hard choices that they have to make, and then when he shoots him in the back of the head, it just glances off, obviously, so his dad just starts sprinting through the woods, and Brandon's ripping around the trees with already dated CGI right before killing him.
Brandon, please, stop. Stop, don't hurt me, okay? Brandon, please, please, please. Brandon, don't, I'm sorry.
And to be honest, I think this should have been the inciting incident in the movie, the thing that sparks Brandon into being truly evil. But the problem is, he's been evil all the way up until this point. If Brandon was forced to make a hard decision to kill his own father because his father tried to kill him, that is an interesting way of making your character just pure evil. That would make sense. That would actually give him some motivation to do these heinous things that he's doing. But it's not. It happens like an hour into the movie and there's only 20 minutes left. And he's already been evil this whole time. So it's just this kind of good idea that's just not very well executed. But instead, a glowing spaceship just tells him to be evil. So now we get an elongated game of cat and mouse where his mom tries to kill him right before he uses the power of bad green screen to murder his mommy. Then it plays Billie Eilish, and it ends.
I'm that bad type, make your mama sad type, make your girlfriend mad type, might seduce your dad type.
Pretty awful movie, really. It's not made that horribly, and it has some legitimately great scenes in it, but it ultimately feels like squandered potential. It has such a cool idea, and it does virtually nothing with it. It boils itself so far down that it ultimately just ends up being a lazy story strung together by horror cliches. And that's it. That's all this movie is. It's a hackneyed and downright bland attempt at making something interesting or clever. And it just doesn't work at all. I would not recommend you watch this. If you have, I'm sorry if you haven't steered clear. So that's it. I'll see ya in the next video, whatever I end up doing. So bye-bye.